Do you feel at peace, but everything around you keeps draining you? Rumi said, "You were born with wings. Why do you still crawl on the earth?" And this phrase, so simple and so profound, can hide a silent pain that almost no one has the courage to look at head-on. Because maybe what you call peace is just forced silence. Maybe this calm you feel on the outside is the reflection of a soul tired of fighting. And maybe, just maybe, the world doesn't tire you because it's chaotic, but because you learned to carry weights that were never yours. The weariness of the soul is invisible. He doesn't scream, he doesn't bleed. He crawls silently as his body feigns normality. You smile, you help, you listen, you understand, you give advice. You are strong. But inside, there is an emptiness that cannot be filled even with 1,000 moments of peace. Because this peace you feel doesn't taste like lightness. It tastes like exhaustion. Do you know what I'm talking about? When the day begins and you wake up wanting it to end. When you are among people but feel alone. When everything seems peaceful, but your soul cries inside, in silence. It's like there's existential fatigue, a type of tiredness that rest cannot cure. Because no matter how much sleep you get, how much you try to get away from the noise, there is still something inside that pulses, and it hurts. And the cruelest thing of all is that no one notices. You don't scream, you don't beg, you don't break. You just disappear a little bit of yourself. And perhaps this is the true cry of the soul, the slow disappearance of those who no longer have the strength for another emotional battle. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But how can light enter if you live numbing the pain? Maybe you've done everything you can to heal yourself. Meditation, silence, withdrawal. You learned not to react, not to argue, not to care. But wasn't this peace you built, in fact, a wall? A wall so high that even you can't climb it anymore. You may seem at peace, but inside there is still an echo, a feeling that the world demands too much, talks too much, invades too much. And you just want to be silent. You just want to breathe. You just want to exist without being sucked in. But the world demands it. It demands reaction. It demands energy. It demands presence. It demands productivity. And this is where the wear and tear begins. You are at peace. But this peace is not enough to protect yourself from the noise outside. Because real peace never tires. Real peace feeds, nourishes, heals. What drains you is the version of peace you created to survive. Do you recognize yourself in this? So comment now below. The world tires me, but I am ready to listen to my soul. Because this video is for you. For you who have already learned to silence the pain, but have not yet learned to listen to it. For you who seem strong, but feel like you're slowly disappearing. Maybe what your soul wants today is no longer an external solution. Maybe she just wants you, for the first time, to hear what's screaming silently inside you. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about now. Because there is a type of pain that makes no noise, but consumes everything inside. It's the pain of looking good, when in reality, you're just operating in survival mode. The pain of saying that everything is fine, just so as not to worry anyone. The pain of no longer knowing if what you feel is sadness, or just the exhaustion of carrying the world on your shoulders for too long. And if this touched you, if somewhere inside you these words resonated, comment below. I'm tired, but I still want to find myself. This simple comment is not just engagement. It is a gesture of courage. It's your first step to breaking out of silence and starting to truly listen to yourself. And if you felt like this video was speaking to your soul, leave yours like now. This shows that this type of content needs to continue to exist. Help the channel reach other people who, just like you, they feel at peace on the outside, but they carry a tiredness that no one understands. Subscribe too, not to follow another channel, but to walk together on a journey of healing, of true healing, of reconnecting with the soul. Here, you don't need to feign strength. Here, even your tiredness is sacred. Now, let's go even deeper. Because what you feel has a root. And when you understand that root, something inside you begins to free itself. Have you ever felt like the world is asking too much of you? Even when you're silent? As if even your calmness bothered you? As if the simple fact that you choose silence, introspection, lightness, was almost a challenge to the chaos that exists out there? And then you try to maintain balance, try to protect your peace, try not to absorb the noise of the world. But little by little, this effort becomes a burden. Yes, even peace can become a burden, especially when she needs to be constantly defended from expectations, demands, and judgments. You are not at war, but you are always alert. And this state of constant vigilance, of having to justify your stillness, your absence, your pause, is what invisibly drains your soul. People look at you and think, she's fine, he's calm, he's over it. But no one sees how much it costs to maintain this appearance of tranquility. No one can imagine the emotional price you pay to not break down in front of others. No one listens to what your soul tries to whisper when you pretend you have everything under control. And do you know why this happens? Because the world was not made to welcome silence. The world screams, accelerates, presses. And when you choose to stop, breathe, be at peace, people start to get uncomfortable, as if their serenity betrayed the emptiness that they themselves avoid looking at. And then they pull you back in, with questions, with demands, with urgencies that aren't yours, with the famous phrase, "Why are you so distant lately?" But no one asks, are you listening to yourself more? Are you taking care of yourself? That's when it all starts to hurt. Because you want to be at peace, but peace requires effort, demands removal, demands resignation, and you feel guilty about it. Guilt for not responding right away. Guilt for saying, I can't right now. Guilt for choosing to remain silent when everyone expects you to explain yourself. And this guilt? It's a poison disguised as responsibility. You're not wrong for wanting to preserve your energy. It's not wrong to not want to participate in everything. It's not wrong to not feel comfortable in superficial, noisy, busy environments. But the world doesn't understand this. The world interprets your introspection as coldness, your reserve as distance, your lightness as weakness. And you start to doubt your own choice. You begin to wonder if you're being too selfish, too disconnected, too different, as if taking care of yourself was a crime. But the truth is different. You're just trying to survive emotionally in a world that feeds on noise. And your soul knows that silence is sacred, that peace is not found in the answers, but in the space between them. That true balance is not about keeping everything under control, but about allowing everything to exist without destroying you from within. Maybe what you're feeling right now isn't sadness, nor anxiety, nor anger. Maybe it's just the tiredness of not being able to be who you are in peace. And that's the invisible problem, because nobody sees. No one sees when you turn off your cell phone, not because you want to isolate yourself, but because you don't have the emotional energy for another empty exchange. No one sees when you look at the ceiling in the dark trying to find meaning in this internal silence that doesn't go away. No one sees when you're in a place full of people, and you feel like you're in a desert. This loneliness in the middle of the crowd is a silent pain, and real. And the worst part is that you yourself begin to doubt the legitimacy of this pain. You start comparing yourself to those who seem happy, functional, productive, and you ask yourself, why can't I be like that too? But your soul doesn't want the same as others. She doesn't want the fast-paced life, the immediate response, the public praise. She wants rest, truth, meaning, space. Rumi wrote, with silence comes peace, with peace comes truth, and with truth you are free. But the truth sometimes hurts, because it reveals that you are tired not of the world itself, but from your constant attempt to fit into places that shrink you, of fitting into conversations that don't touch you, to please people who don't see you. You try to live in peace, but peace turned into a battlefield. And in the midst of this invisible conflict, what hurts you most is not the world itself, is your attempt to be understood by him. And maybe, just maybe, the way forward is no longer to explain yourself. But if you listen, it is allowed. Welcome yourself with the same compassion you give to everyone around you. If you've made it this far, it's because this invisible pain once lived inside you too, because this spiritual fatigue has already visited you on calm days, and because even in silence, your soul is asking to be heard. So, comment below. Not all peace is lightness. Sometimes, it's just survival. This sentence is not just a comment, it is a revelation, a whisper from your soul asking for space to exist. And perhaps this is the most silent part of all, the feeling of being at peace, but feeling that inside, something is emptying, as if this peace you carry were not the fruit of true healing, but the result of giving up. A surrender, not to the sacred, but to the exhausting. Because sometimes what we call peace is just emotional exhaustion. It's just the end of a resistance. The soul has tried everything. It has screamed. It has asked. It has begged to be heard. But since no one listens, it falls silent. And this silence begins to be confused with peace. But this is not peace. This is surrender to hopeless pain, and it has a much truer name: spiritual exhaustion. This kind of fatigue can't be cured with sleep, vacation, or distractions. It appears when your soul is carrying old wounds, unhealed scars, and dashed hopes that you hide even from yourself. It's the result of years of trying to be understood by those who never truly wanted to listen. Years of trying to fit into a world that demands constant strength, even when what you need most is acceptance. It's the exhaustion of giving yourself completely to situations that give you back crumbs of presence, fragments of affection, and an emptiness that only grows with each attempt to be seen. And what does the soul do in the face of this? It withdraws. It departs in silence. And what remains is a kind of artificial peace. A state of emotional anesthesia that appears to be balance but is actually disconnection. It appears to be calm, but is actually detachment. It appears to be wisdom, but is actually profound exhaustion. Rumi said, "When you grow weary of the world, perhaps it is your soul wanting to return home." This phrase carries a spiritual secret that almost no one dares to face, because returning home, in the sense of the soul, has nothing to do with a physical place. It has to do with a state of being. A return to essence, to a place where you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to convince anyone, where you can simply exist. And that's enough. But the problem is that most of us no longer know where this inner home is. We've lost ourselves in so many attempts to be accepted, loved, included, understood, that we've forgotten the way back within. And that's where the void appears, not as a dark hole filled with pain, but as an absence, a lack of meaning that has no logical explanation. You have a seemingly stable life. You're at peace. Nothing serious is happening, but at the same time there's something inside that whispers, "It's not this. This, it's not this," is the call of the soul. It's the reminder that your life isn't just disconnected from others, it's disconnected from you. And this disconnection is what tires you so much. You try to talk to someone about it, but all you get back are canned phrases. Maybe you need to get out more. Try to think positively. It'll pass. But it doesn't. Because it's not a phase. It's an awakening. And awakenings, however beautiful they may seem, are painful. Because to awaken, the soul must acknowledge everything it pretended was okay. It must face the versions of itself it created just to survive. And that takes courage. Because it means letting go of characters, masks, and achievements that no longer nourish. And no one talks about how exhausting this process is, how it consumes, how it takes away the ground before offering the sky. Maybe what you're experiencing right now isn't confusion. It's not loneliness, it's not weakness. Maybe it's just the exact moment your soul, weary of the world, decided to pull you back in, to the silence that heals, to the emptiness that teaches, to the pain that reveals. And it's important to say, this return isn't easy. It's scary, because it demands that you stop searching outside for what can only be found within. It demands that you undo the path, that you let go of certainties, that you accept not knowing. And the world hates not knowing. The world venerates control, quick answers, accurate diagnoses. But the soul doesn't fit into that. It is fluid. And when it's hurt, it whispers. It doesn't scream. And when it wants to return home, it tires you. It doesn't warn you. That's why so many people feel this deep exhaustion even when everything seems to be in order. Because it's not about what's happening outside. It's about what's not happening inside. It's about a nameless longing, a desire to return to something you can't even remember what it's like anymore. But you know, somewhere secretly inside, it still exists. And this longing, this feeling that something essential is missing, it's not fragility. It's spirituality. It's your soul saying, "Hey, are you still there? Because I'm here, waiting for you." Perhaps you've learned to live without listening to yourself, to exist without hearing yourself. But there comes a time when the soul no longer accepts this forced silence. And that's when exhaustion becomes an invitation, a call, a new beginning. Comment below, "My soul wants to come home." This phrase is more than a comment. It's a reminder, a symbol, a key. Right, because maybe today, this will be the first step on the path back to yourself. The truth is, almost no one has told you this, but I'm going to tell you now. There is a key, a spiritual key that can completely change how you experience this silent exhaustion. But this key isn't in the world. It's not in books, nor in gurus, nor in ready-made answers. It's hidden in the subtlest layers of your soul, and it only reveals itself when you start asking yourself, why am I so tired, even when everything seems calm? The answer may be uncomfortable, but it is liberating. What no one told you is that true peace never tires. What drains you is the mask. That mask of serenity you wear every day so as not to worry anyone. This manufactured tranquility you learn to use because, at some point in your history, you realized you could no longer be a burden to others. So you smile. You feign stability. You say everything is fine, even when your soul is begging for a deeper, more sacred, more true rest. And this is the cruelest trap in the emotional world. When you start to confuse emotional survival with spirituality. When you start to believe that remaining silent is wisdom, when in fact it's fear, that giving in is love, when in fact it's the absence of boundaries, that maintaining the appearance of peace is maturity, when in fact it's escape. The soul is exhausted when you live in internal dissonance, when what you feel has no space to exist outside, and you get used to this gap between what's inside and what shows on the outside. You get used to being the fortress, the rock, the shoulder to cry on, and it all seems noble, it seems beautiful, it seems evolved. But deep down, you know, you can't take it anymore. It's not peace that tires you. It is the constant staging of a peace that was never genuine. You've adapted so well to the role of spiritually balanced that you're now afraid of falling apart. But falling apart is not failure. Breaking down is often the only way to break free from the walls you've built to protect yourself. Rumi said, "Try not to resist the changes that come to you. Instead, let life live through you." But how can you let life live through you if you're always trying to appear calm, resolved, untouchable? How can you allow your soul to breathe if you lock it behind pretty phrases and a self-control that isn't peace? It's repression? The hidden key is right there. It's the moment you recognize that your exhaustion doesn't come from the world, but from the constant tension between what you feel and what you show. It's at the moment when you understand that you are trying to sustain a spiritual image, when your soul just wanted to rest without explanations. You don't have to be enlightened all the time. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't have to look strong to be worthy of love. Maybe your soul is screaming for permission. Permission to show vulnerability. Permission to say that everything is not okay. Permission to not know. Permission to stop carrying the weight of spiritual perfection that the world expects of you. And there is nothing more liberating than this. Own your truth, even if it seems shaky, messy, or contradictory. Say to yourself, I don't need to sustain a false peace to deserve rest. This is where healing begins. It's not when you fit into patterns. That's when you let go of them. Your pain needs space. Your silence needs to be heard, not suffocated by wise words that you no longer feel. Your soul doesn't want a speech. She wants presence. She wants authenticity. She wants you to be real again, even if it means crying. Even if that means saying, I can't take it anymore. Even if it means admitting that that beautiful spirituality you try to live has become another burden. That's the key. Accept the collapse without guilt, embracing the mess as part of the sacred, and realize that true peace never requires effort. It comes when you're no longer trying to look like one. It comes when you start to simply be. It's not meditation that saves you. It's not the retreat. It's not the soft music in the background. It's the moment you stop lying to yourself. It's the moment when you look in the mirror and say, enough. I don't need to fake serenity to deserve love. And maybe now as you hear this, something inside you is trembling. Maybe it's your soul, opening a crack in the armor. Maybe it's the beginning of a comeback. Maybe this is the beginning of the truth. So comment below. I don't need to look peaceful to deserve rest. It's not just a sentence, it is a written liberation, an act of quiet courage, a reminder that your soul is here, alive, and finally starting to breathe. Maybe you are that person who always listens to others, who is there when no one else is, who welcomes, understands, embraces with a look, with a presence, with a listening ear. Maybe you're the silent fortress everyone turns to when their own world falls apart. The one who, even in pieces, holds the pieces of others with her bare hands without complaining, without backing down. But no one asks you how you are. No one stops for 5 seconds to look into your eyes with the same depth you offer everyone. No one realizes that behind your "everything is fine," there is an entire sea trying to stay calm on the surface, while inside it slowly sinks. It's like you became invisible the very moment you started to look stable. You learned to be strong, smiling when I wanted to scream, to be silent when the chest begged for a voice. You specialize in not disturbing, in adapting to the mood of others, in adjusting your energy so that no one feels like you are carrying something heavy. And that's tiring. It's tiring in a way that you can't see. It gets tiring in a place where the body continues to function but the soul no longer responds. Have you ever felt that way? Like you're drowning in a calm sea? The water is clear. The sky is blue. Everything seems peaceful, but you are sinking, and nobody sees. Why don't you scream? You learned that shouting is annoying. Then you shut up, move away. Says everything is under control when everything is falling apart inside. Maybe you're experiencing this right now. Maybe you're in a relationship where you always care, always listen, always understand, but it is never heard. It is never welcomed. It is never a priority. And yet, you remain there, steady, silent, trying not to break. Or maybe it's at work. You give more than you receive. You put up with more than you should. You smile when people ignore you. You try hard not to appear fragile. You become a role model. But no one asks if your emotional health is okay. Or maybe it runs in the family. You are the one holding everyone back. Who solves problems? Who builds bridges? Who doesn't cry so as not to destabilize the environment? And that's why everyone sees you as an example. But no one notices how much you miss being taken care of either. And you continue. He continues because he learned that being good means enduring, that to love is to resist, that having light is bearing the shadows of others, even when they darken your own path. But the truth is, there comes a time when this becomes unsustainable. The soul begins to wither. The body begins to give signals. The mind is scattered. Sleep does not come. Joy disappears from little things. And you find yourself saying, I just want to rest, but I don't know how anymore. Because it's not about resting the body. It's about taking a break from the pressure of looking good, to free yourself from the need to maintain stability so that others don't get scared. Stop pretending to be lighthearted when, in fact, what would do you the most good right now would be to simply say, I'm tired too. But who listens to the strong? Who takes care of those who always take care? Who notices when the soul is begging for a break, even if the lips keep saying everything is fine? That's why the deepest tiredness is not physical. It is the spiritual. It's the one that comes when you slowly abandon yourself so as not to disappoint anyone. When you stop being whole to be accepted. When you repress your truth to maintain bonds that, deep down, hurt you more than they welcome you. You don't have to keep living like this. You don't have to sustain a world that's crumbling inside you just so others feel comfortable in your presence. You have the right to say you're sold out. You have the right to not be strong all the time. You have the right to exist without constantly offering healing to everyone else while you yourself are hurting. Rumi said, "You were created with the ability to heal, but that doesn't mean you have to bleed every day for others." And perhaps this is one of the hardest truths to accept, that your peace matters too, that your pain is also sacred, that your soul also needs a hug, a break, a silence that doesn't require a return. So, if you recognized yourself in all of this, if for a second this video touched something you couldn't name, write here in the comments, "I need to be heard too," because this sentence, besides being a comment, is a statement. It's an act of courage in the face of a world that expects you to always be okay. And maybe today is the first time someone actually hears that from you. There comes a point where the body can handle it, but the soul can't. The body gets up, responds, moves on, smiles. The soul can't. The soul can no longer sustain what the world expects of it. And that's when everything begins to crumble from the inside out. Not in the form of a visible collapse, but in a thick silence that takes over your days without asking permission. The soul grows weary when it's forced to smile while feeling like disappearing. And the disappearance of the soul doesn't happen all at once. It comes gradually, in small withdrawals, in the moments when you realize that talking is useless, that opening up only exposes the pain even more, that asking for help feels like weakness. So you become silent. You retreat. You stop sharing. You stop seeking. You stop feeling. Until the day comes when you realize you're there, but you're not anymore. It's a slow, cruel emptying, because the world applauds your performance, and you become an expert at disguising your wounded soul. You respond, "Good morning," lightly. You smile in photos. You participate in conversations, but everything seems distant, rehearsed, automatic. Nothing feels the same anymore, and maybe you don't even know why. Maybe you can't even name it. You just feel like something is being left behind, until it's completely lost. And when you try to explain, no one understands, because it's not a concrete problem. It's not something that can be solved with advice, medication, or a trip. It's something deeper, invisible to the eye, but brutally present within you. It's the kind of pain no one notices because you've become too functional, too calm, too spiritual. And this, ironically, has made you invisible. Because the world believes that those with spiritual awareness don't suffer, that those who talk about healing don't need to be healed, that those who listen, embrace, and understand have already transcended any pain. But it is not like that. Rumi said, "Close your eyes, fall in love with yourself, and stay that way forever." But how can you fall in love with yourself when all you feel is an ancient weariness? A weariness that comes from so many swallowed no's, so many stifled emotions, so many ignored voids. Maybe your exhaustion is exactly that, the call to go back inside, to a space where you don't have to prove anything, where your soul can simply be, where there's no obligation to understand everything, solve everything, carry everything. The world demands a lot from those who appear strong, but it forgets that even those who shine need shade, that even those who guide need a break, that even those who heal need to cry. And the soul gets hurt in these silent places. It gets hurt every time you say yes when you want to say no, every time you listen to others but silence your own pain, every time you feel like you no longer have space to simply exist without justifying yourself. This wound of the soul isn't just sadness. It's a loss of meaning. It's a disconnection from one's own essence. It's living on autopilot even when you know the way back. It's knowing where the cure lies, but not having the strength to reach it. And this wound doesn't hurt outrageously. It hurts gently, with a weariness no one sees, with a distance that feels like choice but is actually protection, with a silence that feels like wisdom but is exhaustion, with a calm that feels like maturity but is merely the reflection of a soul that has given up on being heard. The wounded soul doesn't want advice. It doesn't want solutions. It wants presence, truth, a space where it can exist without performance, without judgment, without demands, a space where it can rest from the pressure of always being light when, in truth, all it wants is to be human. You have the right to go back inward, to listen to your soul without rushing, to allow yourself to reconnect, to embrace that part of you that was ignored in the name of survival. You have the right to look at yourself with kindness, even when everything around you tells you that you should be stronger, more determined, more serene. Wear and tear doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. A wounded soul doesn't make you less spiritual. It makes you more human. And it is in this place of humanity that true healing begins. Not when you conform to expectations, but when you say goodbye to them. Not when you pretend you've overcome it, but when you have the courage to feel. Perhaps this is the greatest act of self-love. To stop demanding from the soul a lightness it cannot yet offer. To stop demanding light where there is still shadow. To stop accelerating a process that by nature requires silence, seclusion, and acceptance. You don't need to rush. The soul heals in its own time. And all she wants most is for you to come back inside and say, "I'm here. I see you. I'm not leaving you anymore." If this resonated with you, comment below, "I see my soul, and I am ready to listen to it." Because sometimes, everything starts to change when you stop ignoring what screams silently, and choose with courage to stay. And then, something begins to change. Not suddenly, not with grand explosions or theatrical revelations, but like someone waking from a long sleep without realizing they were asleep. Like a breeze that passes through the soul after years of inner turmoil. A new space opens within you, even if everything seems the same on the outside. And it's in this silent space that something reveals itself. You're not broken. You're just tired of holding it all together. And this awareness, even if subtle, changes everything, because it lifts the burden of self-criticism. It dissolves the narrative that there's something wrong with you, and it allows you to see what no one taught you to see, how strong you were for so long, even though no one realized the cost, how much you walked on your own wounded feet, holding up the world of others while your own crumbled in silence, how much you were a presence for everyone while your absence grew within. You're not broken, you're exhausted, and that's not weakness. It's humanity, it's raw spirituality, it's the soul asking for what the world can't give: silence, truth, and reunion. Silence, so that external voices finally stop dictating your rhythm, your decisions, your feelings, so that you can listen to yourself without interruptions, without interference, without demands. A silence that is not emptiness but shelter, that is not absence but a portal. Truth, so you can stop performing a piece that was never yours. So you can say, in no uncertain terms, that you're tired of sustaining one-sided relationships, promises that only hurt, roles that no longer belong to you. Truth, so your soul can breathe without fear, without disguise, without self-deception. So you can look in the mirror and recognize what's there, even if what's there is still in ruins. And reunion, because perhaps you've distanced yourself so much, trying to be everything to everyone, that now you barely recognize yourself. Because you lost yourself trying to maintain connections, save affections, belong. And now all your soul asks for is to return. Return to the essential, to stillness, to the space where there's no need to be more than you are, where there are no more characters, only presence. This moment, however silent, is a turning point, not an end point, but a fork in the road. You begin to realize that you no longer need to chase acceptance from others, that you no longer need to maintain control over everything, that you no longer need to justify yourself, prove yourself, explain yourself, and that, in itself, is liberation. It's a kind of spiritual rebirth, because all the pain you've carried up until now, all the silences you've swallowed, all the times you chose someone else and forgot about yourself, all of this now transforms into wisdom, into inner light, into a kind of awareness that doesn't shout but whispers. You no longer need to carry what isn't yours. You can return expectations. You can release burdens. You can choose to rest, even if the world thinks you can still take more. And that choice is sacred. The choice to be honest with yourself. To stop feigning resilience when what you need is acceptance. To abandon trying to appear okay and instead embrace the truth of your now with all that it entails. Pain, exhaustion, weariness, hope, faith. You begin to remember that spirituality is not the absence of pain, but the full presence within it. That awakening is not becoming immune to emotions, but rather making room to feel them without fear. That being whole is not being perfect, but being aware. And that self-love is not an unattainable goal, but a repeated gesture amidst chaos. Perhaps your soul has been waiting for this moment for a long time, for this instant when, instead of pretending to endure, you simply allow yourself to exist as you are. And in this simple, almost invisible gesture, a new way of living is born, more honest, more gentle, more real. It's not about making big changes, nor about having everything resolved. It's about a return, an internal yes, a pause, a new choice, the choice to no longer abandon yourself. Because in the end, that's what your soul has always wanted, that you wouldn't put it off, that you wouldn't silence it in the name of a false peace, that you wouldn't continue distancing yourself from yourself to maintain relationships, promises, or images that no longer nourish you. Now you know. The peace you've been searching for doesn't require effort. It happens when you come back to yourself, when you stop fighting what you feel, when you accept that you're tired, yes, but that this tiredness can be the beginning of something new, something real, something yours. And in this moment when everything seems so quiet inside, perhaps a new strength is being born. Not the noisy strength of someone who faces the world with armor, but the quiet strength of someone who can finally be whole without needing to appear perfect. Comment below, my soul no longer wants to survive. It wants to live again. Because maybe today, for the first time, you are beginning to hear what your soul has been trying to tell you for so long. The truth doesn't always arrive with a bang. Often, it comes slowly, like a warm wind blowing through a window in the late afternoon. It doesn't invade. It reveals. And when it arrives, there's no turning back. Because once the soul sees, it can no longer pretend it didn't see. Once you feel, you can no longer numb yourself to the old discourses that kept you trapped. And the truth that may be revealing itself to you now is this. It's not wrong to be tired. You spent so much time beating yourself up over it, trying to understand why. Even though you were doing everything right, there was still this weight on your shoulders, this knot in your chest, this lack of enthusiasm for the things that once moved you, trying to appear whole when, really, all you wanted was to stop for a moment and say, I can't handle everything, and that's okay. You're not wrong for feeling this way. You're not wrong for needing time, space, or silence to bring you back to yourself. What's wrong is abandoning yourself to continue pleasing those who don't listen to your pain. What's wrong is living in a constant emotional performance where you smile on the outside while crumbling on the inside, just because someone told you not to fall, not to weaken, not to show vulnerability. But the truth that heals, that liberates, that transforms, is different. The truth is that you have the right to stop, to say no, to close your eyes in the middle of the day and take a deep breath without feeling guilty, to not live up to the expectations others have placed on you, because your soul is not a place of exposure. It is a sanctuary, and it needs silence, reverence, and acceptance. Today, perhaps your true peace begins when you stop pretending everything is okay. When you look at yourself honestly and acknowledge, everything is not okay, but I'm here, I'm feeling, and as painful as it is, this too is life. This too is spirituality. This too is healing. You no longer need to hide behind a veneer of serenity, because the sacred isn't in appearing calm, it's in being true. It's in accepting that fatigue exists, that pain has its place, that silence is necessary, and that your soul has the right to exist fully, with light and shadow, with faith and fear, with strength and exhaustion. It's at this point that surrender begins. Not as a surrender, but as a return. You begin to realize that you no longer need to fight what you feel, that you no longer need to justify every pause, every separation, every unexplained tear. Because accepting the truth isn't weakness, it's liberation. And it's in this acceptance that something changes. The pain doesn't go away. The fatigue doesn't disappear overnight. But you stop fighting it. You stop emotionally abusing yourself to fit into a world that only validates performative happiness. You begin, for the first time, to treat yourself with compassion, with kindness, with patience. The soul heals when it no longer needs to hide what it feels, when you allow what hurts to exist without rushing to pass, when you give voice to what has been silenced for so long within you. And perhaps that's what's happening now. The soul finally being heard, finally finding space, finally being able to breathe. You no longer need to explain your pain for it to be valid. You no longer need to convince others that your exhaustion is real. You just need to acknowledge it, honor it, listen to it, because the outside world doesn't know what you feel, but you do, and that's enough. Perhaps this is the first step toward a new way of existing, an existence where you no longer need to adapt to everything, accept everything, absorb everything. An existence where you can preserve yourself, where you can say, not today, without guilt, where you can close your eyes and choose to be with yourself. You were not made to dissolve into the demands of others. Your soul was not born to beg for understanding. It was born to express, to pulsate, to feel, and above all, to be welcomed by you. This surrender isn't a collapse. It's a birth. The seed of freedom begins to germinate when you stop lying to yourself in the name of a peace that was never truly peace. And little by little, you begin to feel that you can let go, that you can breathe, that you can exist without the obligation to appear strong. Because now you understand, what drains you is not feeling, it's pretending. What hurts isn't the pain, it's the constant effort to deny it. Accepting the truth doesn't destroy you, it restarts you, it reconnects you. It gives you back your life with a different texture, a different rhythm, a different depth, and you no longer need to run. You no longer need to prove anything. You no longer need to hide. Comment below, I stop pretending and start listening to myself. Because perhaps this simple act of writing is the beginning of the truest silence your soul has ever known. You can come back to yourself. You really can. And maybe that's the only thing you still needed to hear for real. Because while the world pushes you out, to perform, to conquer, to keep up appearances, there is a whisper inside you that says, come back, come home, turn towards the center, come back to the space where you don't have to be strong all the time. Because no one can handle being a fortress every day. No one can sustain all the expectations, all the demands, all the looks that expect you to always be well, always balanced, always ready to solve everything. And when you try to sustain that for too long, you start to disappear from yourself. That's why coming back to yourself is an act of healing, because it is in this silent, intimate return, almost imperceptible to outsiders, that you begin to remember who you were before all this, before the pressure, before the rush, before getting used to pleasing so as not to be rejected, before silencing yourself so as not to disturb, before hiding behind smiles that protected a soul tired of trying to be accepted. Coming back to yourself is more than a choice. It's a rescue. It's remembering the sound of your own inner voice. It's recognizing the space inside you that wants nothing other than truth. And truth is, sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it's tiredness. Sometimes it's saying, I just want to breathe without justifying myself. Healing doesn't come from big answers. It doesn't happen when you discover a miraculous secret, nor when someone says the right phrase. Healing begins the moment you stop running away from yourself, when you stop abandoning yourself, when you come back, and this place you return to is not a state of perfection. It's not a version of you without pain, without flaws, without a past. It's the opposite of that. It's the space where all of who you are can exist, with the mess, with the doubt, with the mistakes, with the falls. It's the place where you don't have to explain yourself, where the world doesn't need to understand you because you finally understand yourself. And when you understand yourself, something inside you quiets down, not because everything was resolved, but because for the first time you stopped demanding of yourself, you welcomed yourself. He hugged himself, if you allowed it. This welcome is what the soul has always wanted. Not perfection. I don't applaud him. Not the pretty picture, but the permission to feel, to stop, to be imperfect and still be worthy of care, of presence, of love. When you come back to yourself, you realize that the outside world no longer needs to define you, that you no longer need the validation you always sought from others. You discover that your peace does not depend on the understanding of others. It arises the moment you stop explaining yourself and start listening to yourself, the moment you understand that not everyone will follow you. And that's okay. Some people only knew how to live with their wounded, adapted, exhausted version. They may not know what to do with their truth, but you know, and that's enough. Because when you find yourself, nothing outside of you has the power to define you anymore. Neither the looks, nor the judgments, nor the silences of others. You learn to be self-sufficient, not in an isolated or proud way, but in a serene way. You learn to build a home within. And living within yourself is living with more calm, more presence, more lightness. Not because the pain is gone, but because now you know where to go back when it hits you. Coming back to yourself is a right. It is a silent gesture of courage. It is a prayer without words. It's looking in the mirror and instead of looking for what's missing, recognizing what's always been there. You, whole, vivo, possible. And even if the path still seems confusing, even if the soul still carries old pains, the simple fact that you stopped to listen to this call is already healing in progress. It is the sacred moving within. It's the beginning of a new cycle, where you no longer need to wear masks to be loved, where authenticity becomes your protection, and where the truth stops hurting and starts to set you free. If this spoke to you, comment here. I come back to myself with lightness and truth. This phrase could be the first step towards a reunion. And finding yourself again is always the beginning of returning to what should never have been forgotten, your own soul. If you've stayed this far, it's because something inside you recognized itself on this journey, and maybe it's time to take a deeper step. Here, you don't need to feign strength. Here, even your silence has space. So if this message spoke to your soul, if something inside you felt seen, subscribe to the channel. This is a space for emotional refuge, for true listening, for spiritual reunion. Oh, and don't forget, leave your like now. This helps this message reach other souls who, like you, are also tired of pretending. Now watch the next video that appears on the screen. He continues this journey within, and maybe that's exactly what his soul needs to hear right now.